Okay. Okay. All right. So we are recording. If you have a problem with that, you might want to turn off your video, although I think I have it set so that you won't show anyway. So thank you for coming to our Ask the Expert sessions on rain gardens. Maria Harwood from Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District has been very kind to volunteer to do this session and take your questions. She already had a lot of questions and photos from people, and so she'll talk about that first and any other presentation she wants to make. And then if there's time, you'll be able to ask questions later, but please put them in the chat box. We'll take any of those questions first. And we'll plan to finish at 10:30. And whether we go longer would be entirely up to Maria and her schedule. So thank you, Maria. Please take it away.
Thanks, Margaret. Good morning, everybody. I'm just, I was helping shuttle everybody in from that waiting room while you were giving that introduction. So I think we've still got some folks joining us, but we are recording like Margaret said. So we can go back through that. So we've got until just an hour to go through, and thanks again for everybody for submitting those great descriptions and those photos. Actually, I should just go ahead and check. Is my volume okay, Margaret?
Yes, it's good.
Okay, thanks. So thank you for pre-submitting that. We will dive right into learning about a rain garden. So again, thank you to Plant Nova Natives for having me for their Ask an Expert series here. I will say at the end, I have tons of resources on a slide. We can always send those out afterwards with links. We can try and add links to the chat box so you can click on them during the presentation as well if you want to follow along that way. But again, the recording will eventually be displayed. Really briefly, get my slide to advance. Let's try that. Good morning, computer. Okay. Really quickly, just about who I am. Again, Maria Harwood with the Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District. I think we have a lot of folks who've joined us and submitted questions outside of the exact service area of our district, but I'm happy to entertain all of those questions as best I can. But again, we're soil and water districts are sort of this unique little niche. So we're considered a political subdivision of the state of Virginia. We used to, the reason why we have a Northern Virginia name is we used to be part of, had parts of Loudoun and Prince William in our jurisdiction, and then we split off in 1971, as the slide says. So we kept the Northern Virginia name, which is a little confusing, but we only serve residents within Fairfax County. With a few exceptions for some of our cost share programs, we do have memorandums of understanding to extend their services to folks in, say, City of Alexandria or City of Fairfax for some of our extra programs. So again, we are non-regulatory, so we are not a part of Fairfax County government, but if you do email me, I have a Fairfax County email address, and our website is on the Fairfax County webpage, so it gets really confusing, understandably, but just to spend a few minutes talking about, basically we give technical advice, and that's our little niche in the world. So as that slide, I just said this, non-regulatory and advisory, so here to help, very basically. Okay, just to kind of keep us all engaged this morning, I wanted to go ahead. Maybe I can I put this in the chat box? This link. Let me see if I can throw this here so we can chat, or I made this little form. Let's see if I can pull up. Where's my chat? Maybe I have to stop. Chat. Okay. see if that works for everybody to pull up the form. I just want to go ahead and pull a little bit to see the knowledge level and just to engage everybody this morning. How expert level are we with rain gardens? So you can go ahead and I'm going to pull up the form as well. Are you seeing the
Yes, we're seeing it.
Okay, so if everybody can, if you have availability to pull it up on your end, just take a few seconds to fill it out, and then I will try and pull up the results screen here. And or you can stick it in the chat as my slide size, whatever's easiest. So we have some folks chiming in. They've heard of it, don't know anything about it. Pulling up, it looks like we might still be getting some results in the form coming in. Let's go back. Okay. Go ahead and try and share this with everybody. Okay, some people already built their own. I think we got some questions about that. Unfamiliar with the concept. Oh, okay, so some people going ahead and building them. Here we've got the results. How familiar are you with rain gardens? We've got people who've seen them in person before, and a little bit of note and name only. So that's great. If you could give this talk, I would call on you in an instant, have you help out. Let's see, 11 responses. Well, what do you think of when you hear rain garden? Let's see if I can get these to display. Help water drainage, rain and vegetables. That's interesting. Stormwater, native planting, drainage, sand, gravel, stone, native plants, filtration, water solutions. Yeah. Think of it as a pond. We can talk about that a little bit. Temporary ponding, yep. Water and plants, which is great. We got that name, rain garden. And one thing I'll talk about, kind of a little bit of a misnomer that I think it doesn't help us as much with understanding what rain gardens really do. They absorb water runoff, reducing native plants, stormwater runoff, wetland that is specifically designed to control excess water. We'll go into a little bit of these terms as well to try and understand. So I think we have anybody. So some people have experience with seeing it, but can I make the slide bigger? Oh, is that in response to this one?
We just can't, there you go. We can't see anything that you're saying.
Oh, okay.
Survey.
It wasn't popping up. Okay. Maybe this is a little bit better. So again, this was the poll from the audience, just going through kind of a little bit of a knowledge check to understand. Thanks for the feedback on what areas of soil and depressions. That's good. Some more stuff in the chat box coming in. We'll go into why wetland maybe isn't the best term specifically, and kind of what a wetland is a little bit more when we talk about soils and rain gardens. So, but I think the name, let me try and come back. Is this, just for a check, is this slide big enough? Was it just the poll that was too small?
This is fine.
Okay. So for rain gardens, obviously we think of, no, I can't get it to advance. Sorry, give me one more second. We've got something else in the chat. Purpose of a rain garden is to take all the rainwater coming off our church building complex. Old sanctuaries having water infiltration in the basement. Okay, we can talk about that some more when we get to the problems. If I can get this slide to advance. All right. So here on our slide, I've got two pictures, which kind of the top one with some of the feedback we got is it's a wetland up there. It's got some wetland plants on it. Let me see if, can you see my mouse right now when I move it around, Margaret?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So up here we've got a typical wetland. We've got some wetland plants. We have the hydrology of water that is there most of the time for a year. So what makes up a wetland is the soils, the water, the hydrology, and the plant community. So that kind of clues us into we are looking at a wetland here. What makes a wetland different from a rain garden is the name is a little bit of it tricks us because it's got rain in it. But as we know, we've just come through a series of a little bit of a dry spell, although we have had some rain recently. But the dry weather, all of the plants in these rain gardens have to be able to survive that dry weather as well as that brief inundation or periods of wet. So we've got this desert image down here, and we got to think about the juxtaposition of the really, really wet, but then also the really, really dry times and drought that these rain gardens might have to make it through. So it's one of the reasons why we kind of promote native plants. They're a little bit tougher and better adapted to kind of our local ecosystems and the fluctuations in rainfall we might get. The wet versus dry is also really important when we're thinking about the soil that we have where we're placing that rain garden. So if this is a regulated rain garden, I think somebody submitted some questions about a new home building. I wasn't exactly sure if it was because they were fulfilling a stormwater requirement when they were building a new home. So rain gardens can be required as a new home building process, say in this county, if you're tearing down an older, smaller home and you're putting a bigger one on it. So then you're gonna have increased runoff, more stormwater because you have a bigger roof, bigger sidewalk, bigger driveway. So we have regulations to help try and manage that excess runoff and capture it. So rain gardens, or the term bioretention, might also be used when you're talking about some of those regulatory rain gardens that are required as a part of a building process. So those are a little bit more specific, have more specific regulations for depth. For a rain garden, you can absolutely do it yourself in your backyard. Again, that resource page at the end, I've got many different resources to PDFs of how to go out and dig your own rain garden, different tools that you can click through if you like an online tool to help you get through things. Also some YouTube videos that you can watch to learn about a rain garden. So for any different way you learn, I tried to have some different resources there that you can engage with at the end. But so again, rain garden, not quite the wetland. Again, we want these areas to be well draining because we don't want to run into conflict with standing water for long periods of time and the potential to breed mosquitoes. So these areas should be able to collect all of the water, but then drain fairly quickly. That's why the soils are such an important part of the rain garden. So quick definition here and a great schematic to just lay out the baseline. I don't think I've even defined the term rain garden yet, but it's a landscaped depression area that temporarily captures, slows down, and filters rainwater. So again, the temporary is key. We don't want ponding water for a long time. We don't want these areas to become wetlands. That's why, again, understanding what soils we have and where we put them is so important. So in this schematic, we've got water flowing off roofs or driveways. So water can either be piped in underground, say from your downspouts, you can directly connect them. Or if this is just the driveway here and it's a higher location and it's pitched slightly towards the rain garden, all of that runoff that falls on the driveway is going to come this way towards the rain garden and just be connected with sheet flow rather than a pipe. But you can pipe it in, or you can just have them in low standing areas in the landscape. Here they're reinforcing, and I do reinforce using native plants in these gardens again. Typically, they can be a little bit hardier and withstand those really, really wet, really, really dry periods that we have. The name of these, again, rain with the wet garden. If we've got a lot of gardeners on this call, or maybe not so much of a gardener, you can pick plants. If you're more of a gardener, you can get really creative with the plants and all different things. But yes, these are gardens, and gardens do have maintenance component with them. If you want a stormwater management feature that has less of a vegetative component and maintenance, sort of from a garden side, there are different options. A rain garden is one tool in sort of the suite of stormwater management tools that we have. There are different methods that are basically dry wells or larger sized components, infiltration trenches, infiltration pits. Basically, we're digging a hole, filling it with rock, and we can put our downspouts and our other water in there. And then it's slowly going to soak into the ground and the groundwater below with the soil surface. Those areas are less maintenance because, again, you don't have the garden and the vegetative component on top. You might still have some maintenance to keep your gutters clear if you've got your gutters connected. From time to time, if you have a gravel top on those, some people can actually, it's designed, you can just have turf over top of them so they can be pretty just kind of invisible on the surface. Some people really like that if they have smaller yards. But again, garden is in the name of this, and we do need to take that into consideration, that there will be some upkeep and maintenance from kind of a gardening standpoint. So as you can tell, we've got this bowl-shaped depression, and this is important because when it rains and we get that big flush of water really quickly, say in some of our thunderstorms, we need some place for that water to go. So if we don't have a bowl-shaped depression for the water to sit on the surface, it's just gonna fly on by. And we don't want that. We wanna try and grab it, hold it on, slow it down, as it says, temporarily capture, slow down, and then eventually filter that rainwater, and it's gonna soak in to this soil below. Of course, this is an important feature. We will always have a bigger storm. When you design these, you design them to a certain size of rain event to take a certain amount of water. It's just kind of what makes sense. But you will always have a bigger storm. So you need to think about this overflow and hardening with a little bit of rock material possibly, because when you do get that bigger storm, water, this pond is going to fill up and it needs to spill out. So we need to make sure where we're directing that runoff, not towards our home or our foundation or our neighbor's home or neighbor's foundation, but try and provide some overflow in a great direction where it's going to be safely allowed to convey. The soil, again, I talked about how important the soil is. Here, this one says amended tilled soil or replacement soil if necessary. So before you do a rain garden, you think about doing a soils test, which is pretty simply digging a hole, filling it with water, and then timing the amount of time it takes that water to go down. We have a link to our website, how to do an infiltration test. We can also look at soils maps online to help give us a first glimpse into the soils in our area. Some of us who live in lower lying areas near streams, I think we had a question about one of those. Typically, those lower lying areas, we have higher groundwater tables because that's what feeds our streams. So those lower, flatter areas typically have a higher groundwater already. We wouldn't be placing these rain gardens sort of uphill or upstream before we get to these low areas. We want to be capturing the water uphill, let it soak into the ground, and then it's going to find its way slowly through the groundwater to feed our streams with that base flow that's so important to keep the health of our streams. But when we're in those lower lying areas with that high water table conflict, rain gardens and other infiltration methods in general are not very well suited. So again, that soil maps can be a first broad glance, In our county, they're a broad brush stroke, but they're pretty accurate. But then going out with a shovel, digging a pit, doing an infiltration test, pretty easy, but that's going to tell you right at that spot, how well draining is my soil? Because that's the key to the success of these rain gardens. Again, we don't want them to turn into wetlands. We want them to temporarily capture that water. So if you have pretty well draining soil when you do your infiltration test, you might just need to amend the soil, add a little bit of compost and sort of loosen it up a little bit to a certain depth. I think this one is listed about 1 foot to 2 feet of depth. If you have really slow draining soils, but you still want to have a rain garden, there might still be ways to have it be possible. Somebody had asked a question about a raised, basically rain garden planter. So again, I talked about with these regulations of these older, smaller homes getting torn down and bigger homes. Rain gardens, in some areas, if we have the conflict with the soils, instead of putting them in the ground, they actually completely take them out of the ground and put them in planter boxes and run them typically alongside the house to sort of complement the landscaping. So they completely remove it from the conflict of that groundwater table, if it's a high groundwater table. So they literally build these rain gardens outside, out of the ground, have them in their contained boxes. Of course, they have those overflow things again, because you don't want those backing up and getting into your homes. Replacement soil, if your soil is slow draining beyond a certain threshold, you can replace the soil. So why do we need rain gardens? Well, we want to take that stormwater that's running off of our hard surfaces in our urban areas, from our streets, our driveways, our rooftops. We want to capture it, slow it down, filter it, reducing that flow of stormwater from, again, those hard surfaces or those impervious areas, because we want to recharge the groundwater. So instead of having all this water from these downspouts just keep shooting off and eventually getting to the storm drain and going to a stream, we want to try and hold it on site. They can also, again, in the name rain garden, they can also really enhance the beauty of the landscape and support, of course, the local pollinators and wildlife. It is National Pollinator Week, so happy National Pollinator Week to everybody as well. Here's a schematic that talks about how detrimental, or how our stormwater systems work and how detrimental they can be. So again, our hard surfaces, when the rain falls on the hard surfaces, any sort of contaminants on there are just going to wash off. That can be, those contaminants or pollutants can be pet waste, litter, fertilizer, motor oils, or chemicals. All of this polluted runoff is going to make its way into our stormwater system. It's a network of pipes underground. Stormwater system is separate from our sanitary sewer system. Some areas people live on septic, so they have their own sanitary sewer just locally on site. Others of us live in areas where there is a sanitary sewer system. That is a separate system of pipes running underground that's taking the waste that comes out of our toilets and our sinks to a treatment. So our stormwater pipes, typically when they're capturing all of this water from our roadways, they're going straight into our streams unfiltered. That's why including something like a rain garden is a great idea, or other stormwater BMPs, or best management practices. A cool slide. I know a lot of you aren't within Fairfax County, but this is a schematic of the watersheds in Fairfax County. These grayer parts show the higher parts in the county, kind of where those watershed divides are. So what we need to understand is we are all in a watershed. That's what connects us. The watershed is an area of land that all drains to a common body of water. So the previous slide said we're all in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, which is absolutely right. In our area in Fairfax County, all of this drains to the Potomac River. The Potomac River then flows out to the Chesapeake Bay. So anything we do on our yards, anything we apply, because we are within a watershed, is eventually all going to find its way downstream. That's why our land use, what we do on our lands, is so important to the overall health of the bay. It might be hard for some of us to think about the Chesapeake Bay because maybe we don't visit it, recreate there, don't see what's going on very much, don't think of us as very connected to the Chesapeake Bay, but we all have a role in how we use the land on our properties, what we do with it, because again, we are all connected with these watersheds. So these are the major watersheds in Fairfax County. This is just another schematic, kind of a cool graph of all of the streams, just to show you how many streams and water bodies we have in the county. That's pretty cool. Okay, the rain garden parts of it. I kind of show this on the other, we can get a little bit into the jargon, but this bowl-shaped depression area we do call the ponding area. This one, it's got roof water in on this side. So again, we said it could be sheet flow or just water coming off of a slope into the rain garden. They do have some gravel rock here as an energy dissipator, just when it's coming out of that pipe, just to not have scour on this slope, as well as the overflow on the other side, some rock material, just where there would be concentrated storm water. We don't want it to dig in and start eroding the soil. And in this one, they talk about amending soil. Again, we said if you have really slow draining stuff, you could remove and replace the soil to help get better infiltration. Native plants, we're all here, I believe, because we know about the Plant Nova Natives campaign. So just another plug for that. We do like to use native plants again. Coming back to this really, really wet, really dry, some of our native plants can just survive kind of our natural cycles in the climate. So promote using those. PlantNovaNatives.org. Some people had questions about ground cover specifically. They've got wonderful pages and pictures all about ground cover, so I'd really direct you there. NativePlantCenter.net is another great one. This PDF here, this U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It was printed in a booklet. Now they've put it, or it's been online at the NativePlantCenter.net in sort of a searchable way. I think they also have a PDF of it, but that's another go-to for great information about the local native plants. Again, in the name, it is a garden, so there is the maintenance with these. Like I said, there can be other practices that you can do that are not rain gardens, that you can capture and filter and reuse stormwater, recharge your groundwater if you are not kind of a gardener. If you are a gardener and you're okay with that, you can get really crazy with your plant palette and have really beautiful rain gardens. If you're not so much of a gardener, you can, I would stress using shrubs as a lower maintenance option than lots of herbaceous or flowering things. There's lots of native shrubs out there that once you get those established, they can be healthy and fine, and you really don't need to prune or trim them unless you have dead wood for some reason. But once you get shrubs established, again, any of our plants, native plants that you're putting in do have an establishment period. So that could be between 1 to 3 years to keep an eye on them to make sure if we don't have adequate rainfall, they will need a little bit of a drink from you. These are lower areas that should be capturing, again, the stormwater, but if it doesn't rain, they're not going to be getting any rain, just like any other areas in your yard. So think about them after they're first planted for a little bit. Some people had questions on Virginia Conservation Assistance Program or different cost shares programs. If you're in the state of Virginia, there is the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, which is administered through your local soil and water conservation district. So some people were in other parts of the county. So I'd have you go look for your local soil and water district and learn about that. Every district runs it a little bit differently. So for Fairfax County, for us here in Northern Virginia, how we run Ours is, we have an application period once a year that opens for this program. So actually very soon, we're gonna have our site visit request period opening up. If you want to have a site visit, and then we rank those and give kind of the top scoring projects according to watershed or different critical elements. The Conservation Assistance Program is a statewide competition for funds. So what that means is projects in our area are ranked and go up against other projects across the state. So we have a threshold for folks with the ranking criteria that is established, that we want to see sort of competitive projects because we don't want to waste your time or our time. So we want high ranking projects that will have a good chance of getting funded rather than sitting on the waiting list sort of on a low scoring area and just continually being passed up. If you want to learn about when we open this request period, again, I said July of this year, we've got this, you can add your email to this listserv. We've got a webpage here again, or you can email us at conservationdistrict@fairfaxcounty.gov for more specific information, or we can use this. I can try and put this in the chat actually right now, maybe. People want to add themselves to the list. Resources, again, for every type of learner, got different things on here. This is a really nitty-gritty PDF, goes into a lot of detail for designing your own rain garden, all those things that I talked about, you know, learning what your local soils are, doing an infiltration test. This is a yard design tool by Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. This is kind of a click-through online guide that's fun if you like, it kind of holds your hand a little bit more. There are more extensive, longer webinars out there that we've already recorded that are a couple hours long for learning to design a residential rain garden. So we've got some of those down here. A quick fact sheet about rain gardens, just for the fast facts. If you want to see it in action, a video of how to install a rain garden, Maryland Sea granted one of that. To understand the maintenance, I kind of had a little snippet with the slide, but this is more intense on pages 60 through 67. What do we need to know about rain gardens and their maintenance? So I have the pre-submitted questions I can go through here a little bit quickly. I see some stuff has come in the chat. Margaret, do you think, is it better, is it more relevant if I do some of these chat questions first, or just dive into the ones that are pre-submitted?
Well, they were quite relevant, so you
Okay.
could answer them now.
Okay, let me see. So rainwater from a church building. Okay, if you're having water infiltration issues into the basement, particularly a very old structure, you definitely want to make sure things like just the natural grade or the drainage around the building is pitched away, so no water is going to be sitting or pooling or ponding next to the foundation. So if you do want to take those downspouts, you can at least make sure that they're discharging a minimum of 10 feet downslope already. Even if you're, before you even get to making a rain garden, it's great to collect that water, but just for anybody for trying to keep their basement, if you've got a separated structure, dry, again, checking the grade, the slope around your yard right along that foundation, and keeping those downspouts discharging downslope at least 10 feet out, just so there's no, the soil is an amazing sponge. So our soil is made up of air pockets and water. That's what makes our plants be able to live and grow when we don't have periods of rain. So we have those air pockets and water pockets in the soil, and our soil can soak up that water so well. But what that means is it can also soak and wick that moisture back towards the foundation of a building. So that's why we say at least 10 feet discharging. If you're going to be making a rain garden, there are setbacks. So staying away from things like really big trees that have really sensitive roots. staying away from foundations or septic systems. Those are all things to be aware of when you place them, because we are capturing and soaking in water, and we don't want to soak in that water right next to the foundation of our home. Using garden to absorb excess water when it's beneficial insects and amphibians. That's just comments. The person was commenting on the new construction. Okay, so not required, just wanted to do to manage stormwater on your site, keep water away from the house or basement. Discuss the rainfall event increasing the amount of rain in a 24-hour period. The formula for the ponding volume required. So a little bit more in depth from, I think, question from Hartford County here. So in this instance, I'm basically talking to sort of do-it-yourself backyard rain gardens. There's absolutely, like I said, that regulatory side that these are highly sized by engineers to a specific rain event. And they are looking about, people are looking at kind of our runoff rainfall curves without getting too much in depth. So we've been studying really the rainfall patterns that we're seeing. Do we need to change some of these coefficients and things that we have when we size our rain gardens to capture a larger storm event? Typically, we size these to a 1-inch rainfall that captures about 90% of our rainfalls in an entire year. So that's kind of been the benchmark for sizing our rain gardens, about a 1-inch rainfall event. In our area, we get just over about 40 inches of rainfall typically in a year. But again, there is some investigation. People are learning and studying. Do we need to change? And some other localities, I think, have changed their sizing. Instead of the 1-inch rainfall, some of them do require, I think, maybe sizing to a 2-inch rainfall to capture those extra really flashy storms that we have, because those are increasing in frequency. Are the planters required in new construction enough? If I'm not capturing anything, or if I'm off base, please feel free to unmute yourself and comment. Planters required in new construction. No, I'm not totally sure with that one. The comment, I guess, is it enough to capture all of the storm water that's coming off? So the new planters that are required for the new construction, they are sized to take that increase as opposed to that smaller house that was there before. So they aren't meant to take all of the runoff from that entire property for all of the hard surfaces. They're meant to kind of mitigate that additional harm that's being done from a larger house. I'm not sure if that quite gets to if our planters required in new construction. Does Alexandria include City of Alexandria? So our Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, we do have a memorandum of understanding, and that service is extended to City of Alexandria. So welcome you to apply for that program as well. There was a private message about under drains and where to route them. Let's see if I can. I'm trying to remember if I don't think, so under drains are a little bit, okay, so this one just has a note about an under drain. I didn't include any of them with under drains. These are a little bit more, again, for those regulatory rain gardens might have an under drain. What an under drain is, it's a pipe with holes in it that sits within the rain garden. And it's sort of as a fail-safe mechanism. For some reason, if your rain garden starts to clog or slowly fail, if you have an under drain in there, that pipe with the holes in it should be able to capture that water and still draw down your facility so it does not eventually become a wetland. Under drains can be tricky because you have to have enough grade or fall for them to discharge. So they're typically placed at the bottom of the facility in sort of wrapped in a gravel layer so they don't clog. But again, you have to take them deep and then have an area where the ground surface sort of naturally slopes and outfalls. So sometimes to do an under drain, you might have to run that pipe very, very far away to have it just reach the ground surface and then discharging. Under drains can be routed towards a stormwater structure. Typically, typically they under drains. Typically, it's clean water at the bottom of the facility, so they can be routed towards a stormwater structure if you have sort of a yard inlet or one of those other structures in your yard or in the street, like maybe a curb or a gutter. If you don't, again, don't have those under drains draining towards a neighbor's property or typically any hard surface because we don't want that water. There is potential for icing and other things of that nature. So we don't want a continual flow of water on those hard surfaces or sidewalks or streets that could potentially ice in the wintertime. Guidance for homeowners associations, RFP. Okay, yeah, so let me get into the pre-submitted questions and try and run through these really quickly. Okay, so one person had a question about runoff reduction planters. Sort of my response was this a regulated, was this required with the building or is it a not regulated? These planter boxes, this is just sort of my go-to, of course, again, using natives, skip shorter things in there just from a visual. This is more of a completely aesthetic at this point when I'm talking about. If it was a regulated rain garden or a regulated runoff planter, you really do need to stick to the plant palette that's there, at least in this county, when that goes in as a part of the build process with a very specific plant list. If those plants are not there, once these facilities, the county will come around every 5 years to check that you are maintaining them and the plants are alive. If it's not there and if you've deviated from that plan, they, in most instances, will make you replant if things have died or restore it to what it's supposed to look like very strictly according to that plan. So again, if this is a regulated, at least in our county, maybe you can go in and supplement if you want some little bit of annual pop of color or something, but these are boxes and they're sunk in. I don't have a picture of them, but you're not going to see, because it has this big lip of 6 inches or a foot of a wall that is literally that ponding area that is built around it. The plants are very inset. So to see anything sort of from the street or walking by, you're not going to see anything that's planted really low in there. So using longer, taller, leggier things will have kind of a presence that you'll be able to see. The fringe tree, I think that was, somebody had said the comments were the questions or something was still accidentally set to another thing about pruning. So I'll kind of skip that one. I'll just say I threw this up here as an arborist once told me about this book. I have no clue if pruning fringe trees is in there, but this was just referred to me as a great guide for pruning. But I don't own it and don't know if it's got fringe tree in there. Rainwater, how to collect it so it does not attract mosquitoes, not draw HOA violations in the townhouse yard. Rain barrels are a great way to temporarily capture if you want to reuse that water. You have to think about continually emptying that rain barrel, or if you're an active veggie gardener, maybe you will be emptying it a lot, or you can bring it inside to use it to water your houseplants. But those barrels fill up really quickly, even with the small townhouse roof. So thinking about how you're using that water can be really key. We do have low-cost rain barrel pre-made and build your own sales. Mosquito dunks are these sort of larvicide products that you can use if you do have a rain barrel, I have heard people say that a lot of times the mosquito larvae get in your gutters. And so sometimes, depending on the design of your rain barrels, the mosquito larvae will wash into the rain barrel. And some people see a lot of mosquitoes trapped inside the rain barrel. So you can add a mosquito dunk in there if you want to, again, it's a larvicide, prevent those mosquito larvae from maturing. But so not draw HOA violations, some have very specific rules about having compost bins or rain barrels or all those other things. So I would say, of course, just check if you have an HOA committee that has a lot of covenants about architectural review committee, all of those things, because it can be an investment to install a rain barrel or a composter, and if you're going to cut your downspout to divert it and other things like that. So I'd hate for you to invest in it just to have to take it out. But again, education is a big part for the HOA. So we can always, our organization always goes to HOAs and we can give talks talking about rain gardens, native plants, other things. I think Plant Nova Natives as well also gives talks about native plants. So again, education is a big part. So if we can work with some of those HOAs and those covenants to change and sort of, there are some rain barrels that are skinnier, like thin, flat line that you can kind of sneak right around your house, and you can maybe put some lattice work around it to disguise it with growing some climbers on it, or you can do other ways of screening. Some of them are prettier than others. I'll say that when it comes to the rain barrels. The native ground covers for wet, semi-wet, and dry banks for sun and part shade locations. I'm again going to refer to the Plant Nova Natives ground cover list just to save some time. They've got a lot of great stuff. Okay, the park steward, we have those pictures on another slide. We'll try to get to that really quickly. Rain garden and partial shade. I think we also had images to go with this, but I would say a caution. Of course, you can plant a rain garden in the shade with plants that are just adapted to that condition. But I'm asking, why is there shade? Is it just because of the shade of a house, or if it's because of a large tree? Big trees do so much for us when it comes to stormwater management. So we really don't want to run into any root conflict or in any way damage our large mature trees, or even immature trees that one day we want to get to large trees. So if it's shady because you're near or under the canopy of a tree, we're just going to say, yes, maybe rain gardening can be done in a specific spot, but we do want to make sure to protect roots and site those rain gardens in a place where we're not going to have conflicts. This next one also, I have pictures on another slide. Yes, native plants, absolutely, with the rain garden. In one of the PDFs that was listed in the slide earlier, we do have a list of native plants that work well in rain gardens. If that person can't find it, they can always email myself. I can put or Margaret can put my email in the chat box for folks, because I'm not sure if I have it in here. If I don't get to anything, please feel free to email me as well. Again, rain garden's really, really wet, really, really dry. So we just want to think about, what are we putting in there? Don't just put in wetland plants, because again, your rain garden should not be a wetland. We don't want long-standing ponding water in there. What is the diet percentage that should be calculated for a rain garden? 30%, 15%. Does the number include rabbit deer browsing on rain gardens? Maybe this one was in sort of for plant survival. If it's a regulated rain garden, I think they have thresholds. I'm trying to remember. I think maybe they'll let, like, they want a certain, I think they want 90% coverage by a certain year standpoint. I don't know if that number, if they give, if it's regulated, if they give permissions for deer, rabbit browsing. But I think maybe 10 to 20% might be allowed for die-off for the rain garden. Again, I'm not sure on that one. I think we have pictures for this one as well, with the drain box, where the hydric soils. I'm not sure if that person is on, if they want to speak up, if they did end up sending pictures or not. So hydric soils, we were talking about wetlands again, and how rain gardens are not really well suited for those really wet areas. So just when I immediately see hydric soils and rerouting streams and all of those things, I typically don't think of them as having a good separation from that groundwater level to let that water soak in. If we have a high groundwater table, that water is going to sit in a rain garden like a pond because it can't soak in because we're intercepting that groundwater level. So hydric soils and wetlands, all those things, near streams, again, we don't have the type of soils that we typically need that are well draining to capture a runoff and let it soak into the groundwater recharge. HOA has stormwater, soil erosion monitoring, so parking spaces and a sidewalk. I think this person put a note in the chat to me. I don't think they submitted pictures of the parking spaces or the sidewalk to see. It could be absolutely that a rain garden might be able to solve that problem. Sometimes it can be just a matter of, is the runoff that's being, that's coming down that sidewalk or a steep slope, and can it be diverted to another area or off of a slope in a non-erosive manner where it can just go over a natural area? Sometimes you can just do slight grading changes like that, or grade and redirect into a catchment kind of area like a rain garden. Drafting proposals. So if you're an HOA, I talked about the VCAP project. If you're in Fairfax County, we do have funds for, and we do these on a rolling basis every month for approvals for HOAs as opposed to the VCAP program. So I would encourage you to contact us and talk to us now if you're an HOA. Because some of these are really specific questions about drafting proposals. If you're interested in potentially getting cost share for the program, if you're just asking separate from that cost share program, just kind of best tips for requests for proposals, what should be included in it, considerations to keep in mind, what information do bidders expect and need from us, what info is important to get from them. If you are coming to us through our cost share program for the conservation assistance program, we do help out with a little bit of that background of assessing your site, really understanding, do we think a rain garden will work well here? We'll look at the soils to see if that, and we'll kind of do a little bit of that background with you to help develop something that can get into an RFP to put out there. Separate from, if you don't want to do the cost share program, our offices, again, we just give technical advice. So we are more than happy just to, if you send us some pictures and we can just have a little conversation. Again, I don't think I had a additional pictures or.
Maria, I think I have a picture.
Oh, do you?
Want me to share? I can unshare you and share it. Assuming I'm sharing the right picture. Hold on.
I can fly through my pictures really quickly to see if I did.
Okay.
Oh, maybe that was new. I'm sorry if I missed that. Okay, this is a really high use area and I'm seeing mature trees. So this is kind of a common problem with really high use areas. In shade with the mature trees there, you got the picnic area, lots of feet running around, really exciting. I'm not exactly sure where, so I guess somehow this looks like it's all sloped to where the person's standing. So maybe all the runoff that comes through here is sloped off and is ending up in parking spaces. It might be a point to just try and get some deeper rooted or taller vegetation or convert. If this area, because it's so shady, I really don't think you're going to get good grass cover to grow. Putting down mulch is probably good for that tree, so they're not mowing so close to the roots.
Maria?
Yes.
Yeah, I sent the picture in. My name is Sarah.
Hi.
Where it is water is running. You see that white pipe in the back next to the sidewalk?
Oh, okay. This.
That is a test infiltration pipe.
Mm-hmm.
And in that area, the water runs, it comes down a hill from both the left and the right of the picture. And it's running in that area. It runs toward the sidewalk. It then goes down the sidewalk in front of houses and into parking spaces in the sidewalk that's out of the picture to the left. And
Okay.
we have worked with you all in the past on this general area. There's already an
Mhm.
infiltration trench that's to the right of the picture. But
Okay.
this very limited area here that you're seeing to the left of the sidewalk and in front of the pipe, that's the area where water pools and runs. And it runs towards where the picture is taken from.
Okay. So if there is a chance, again, to capture water uphill before we get to steep slopes, it's always a great place to put our infiltration facilities and make sure that we're not going to get a lot of sediments or other loose dirt and things. So if it's in this grass area, it might be a great spot to put a rain garden, or again, you said you've had some other types of infiltration facilities as well. So like an open top or gravel top infiltration trench digging down. So I'd invite you to work a little bit further with us, and maybe we can email just to try and keep moving a little bit. But it sounds like there might be potential, and maybe you've used our CAP program before, but I think we'd love to talk further about that spot and try to help you out. Let me go back and try to share screen. So some of the pictures, this one was, we have really cool mapping systems that show soils and they show runoff. Unfortunately, a lot of these pictures we got, I would love to help people outside of our area, but my maps don't really go as far. So I can't show all of the really cool stuff we've got in the last few minutes, but I applaud this person. They've planted a lot of native plants in kind of this heavily shaded wooded area, underground pipes connected to rain gutters from a roof that drain to it. So I wasn't sure if those underground pipes, if they're draining into this channel. It sort of looks like it's just a natural swale, a low spot or depression in the landscape. Again, if you can try and capture runoff before you get to a steep slope, and if you can put these sort of upstream, uphill in flatter areas. Rain gardens are a little bit trickier to build on slopes. It can be done, but it requires more grading. And if the water is feeding down a really fast slope, or if it's coming through a really shady area like this, it can be picking up some of that loose sediment and depositing those in the rain gardens, which clog that surface, which we want to stay away from. So in this one, if they just wanted to stabilize the swale because they don't want the dirt to erode anymore, a little bit of non-woven geotextile fabric and some rock material to stabilize the channel, although it looks like when it flattens out down here and there's more sunlight, it might be okay. We're not getting a lot of sediment deposition. So it might be in kind of this more open area, we might have potential for a rain garden. I'm gonna try and speed through these because I know we have a lot and we're going over. This person was also outside of our area, but they said not regulatory. I'm guessing beach area, pretty flat and pretty sandy soils. I don't know if there is, looks like foundation here, if there's any subgrade structures. Putting in bioretention planters, those above ground ones might be a good idea if it kind of looks like it's a little bit of a smaller lot size here. So if you really are trying to utilize every inch of space those foundation planters, you can kind of squeeze them alongside the house. You have a good spot for them, as opposed to piping them to another area of the yard. Again, they had some mature trees, so I would just say, pretty please protect those tree roots. And rain gardens, if you're putting them in ground, you do need to dig fairly deeply and extensively. So trying to make sure you're outside of the drip line. Very roughly, if you're looking up at the tree canopy, the area where those the branches extend to the edge of them is sort of the rough drip line, if you just want to think about it in that way. You can work, we really try to have a no cut zone, which is really don't just do any disturbance within about 8 feet of a mature tree. So really staying outside of that area. You can do some disturbance within the drip line. Again, that area you look up at the sky and you see some leaves, depending on the extent of the digging that you're doing. It's just, again, to protect those trees because they're wonderful assets for privacy and shade and stormwater management. So absolutely connecting gutters to pipes and routing them to rain gardens on those newer developments. You'll see, I've kind of said it looked like there was one new home. We were doing a rain garden study in Arlington, and I said it kind of looked like Medusa's hair, like the snake all over, because the landscape architect had decided that the house was painted all white and the gutters were painted all black. And I guess they didn't think that all of the gutters were going to be routed across the house all to one spot. So there were all of these rain gutters painted black on the west side of this white house coming into this rain garden planter. And I just have this visual image of it. It looks like kind of Medusa with the black hair, but you can paint your gutters another color so they'll blend in more, but absolutely you can connect gutters and downspouts and have them into an appropriately sized raised planter box if sort of space is a little bit tight. And at a beach anyways, would expect there to be pretty sandy soils. Looks typically pretty flat. So sometimes standing water can be a bit of an issue on flat areas just because we have no fall or we have no grade to make that water drain away. Let me try and move through these really quickly. So this one, again, it was outside of our area with Arlington. I have some contacts in Arlington that I was going to just try and connect this person with to see if who they could get into contact with a little bit better for the potential of the public school property and seeing if you can get something. It sounds like the park steward is trying to do a lot of the due diligence and stuff themselves, which is great. Contractors are. It's busy season, and with COVID, with everybody staying home and looking at their yards, they've just been super swamped. So I've heard that before, that they that people are getting longer callback times or not really hearing back at all. This looks a little bit worrisome to me. There's like a cavity kind of forming here. So there could be a good bit of stormwater washing down into this gully that I think is forming. Okay, this one, I applaud working with the invasives on the property, especially if you're backing to a county park. Again, I talked earlier on about being in the lower, flatter areas where you might have that groundwater conflict because you're near a stream, or things like RPAs or resource protection areas. So there's extra things to look at when we're in these areas and doing a soils test, looking at our soils map and then doing a soils test and trying to fly through these. So normally I would pull up a map, but I think I'm just going to end up emailing everybody to follow up and do my really great. So I think this was the person who said they had already built a rain garden. So it looks like they're having extended ponding up to 24 hours after real heavy rain. Deer and shade doesn't recede. Some of these other native plants you've already got here look really great to me that are dealing with the heavy shade. Carex or sedges or ferns are all great deer resistant plants. and they can do shade, and they're water loving as well. Another one is, let's see, deer tongue is another native grass that's a little bit taller, but could probably tolerate some of these areas. If you want an evergreen ground cover that can really do shade and likes wetter areas, golden groundsel or golden ragwort is another one that might stand up to the challenges of deer shade and water. I will say fencing just to the establishment, even if it's supposed to be a deer resistant plant, if they don't know it, if it's a new planting, a lot of times they'll come out and just take a bite of it just to learn. And if you've got a big herd of deer moving through and they all need to take a bite to learn if it's a good plant or not, you might not be left with any plant. So doing a little bit of fencing to temporarily get those plants to a larger, more established, where they can recover from that browse as opposed to being completely mowed down, can be a great idea as well. But if deer are hungry, as there is no in deer country, they'll eat anything. This person I think was the last one with a couple pictures. I know we're over, so thanks for bearing with me, folks. Haven't been keeping an eye on the chat box, so I'm not sure if any extras have come in. So this one sounds like this person had just a naturally sloped yard, and they've got a swale between the logs and the fence. Wild plants growing in the swale, pull a few invasives, silkgrass is a one that'll keep coming. Virginia creeper and poison ivy, those are natives. Both of those, some people do get kind of that contact dermatitis, so like that allergic reaction to both Virginia creeper and poison ivy. So even though they're natives, some people do pull them in their yard because of that. But if you have a spot that's kind of out of the way, maybe you can leave some of those. The Virginia creeper, I would love it to be more of a ground cover plant, but no matter what, it always just seems to run to find the best thing to climb up, and then it just doesn't do too much of a ground cover for me. It just loves to climb up everything, fences and whatever. So it looks like this is a little bit of a swale. Depending on the water flow through here, if you're getting vegetation, it doesn't look like there's so much wash through here that you're getting rills or gullies or erosion channels cutting in. And the fact that vegetation is growing in here, I don't think you really need to harden this area with cobbles or stones or anything, but you can keep an eye out for that. If you put mulch in here, I don't see too much of this leaf, like natural leaf litter, which is great to leave as well as a natural mulch. I don't see too much of that moving or washing away either, which can happen. And you can see little, again, those erosion rills or gullies forming if you've got concentrated flow paths coming through here. But looks like maybe your slope is gradual enough and the volume of water is gradual enough that not getting any major damage in this one. This one photo as well, it can be wet for a long time. So if I hear wet for a really long time, typically it's a cue to go look at the soils map and see, are we in an area with maybe those hydric or more wetland soils closer to a stream side? So is that typical or not for this area? Shaded areas, these trees are going to do wonders for you, again, with soaking up stormwater. If there's a way, like if that swale was really discharging all of its water just to a low flat spot back here, and that's what it's standing, there could be ways, maybe you can look at moving the swale to another area, or, you know, if we want to capture that water from the swale and do rain garden, again, big mature trees, which we just need to be careful with when siting rain gardens. Looks like there's a big tree that's taken down here. Level foreground areas. So this one, okay, they do talk about a wetland area. So some of those things, I don't know if they're just referencing the wetland area as where the water is flowing in their yard, or if they really are, maybe it was in here, if it was a resource protection area. I can't remember if that one. But I think there could absolutely be potential somewhere for finding a rain garden or some other type of practice, as long as we've got the right type of soils. So again, VCAP program, infiltrating those practices, we really need to think about, do we have suitable soils, good separation from the groundwater table in the ground? There are things that can be reimbursed, like rain, I'm not going to call them rain barrels, but rain water cisterns, which are larger size. So the program will fund larger size cisterns. They won't fund small size rain barrels. So I think the smallest size that they will fund is 150 gallons. So they're large. They are a presence in your yard. There are some really creative ones out there that are low line or slim line that you can actually put under decks and other things like that, like deck pillows, and engineers have come up with all these great fun things. So if your soils aren't suitable from an infiltration standpoint, cisterns can also be funded through the program. So again, you got to think about, you're capturing that water. How am I going to reuse it on my property? Where am I going to use it? Because once I've got it, you can slowly let it discharge through your property as well, just during dry periods, with like attaching a hose and letting it go downgrade during drier times when it's not raining. But think about how you use that water. What did I miss, Margaret? Any chat comments, or does anybody want to pop in?
No, I don't see any other questions or comments. I was kind of curious about how much you can expect a rain garden to soak up versus a mature tree. I kind of gather that you're better off. I mean, there are other reasons why you're better off with the tree, but just, approximately how much does one do versus the other?
That's a great question, and I think it's come up before. And immediately off the top of my head, I don't have any great statistics for how much stormwater treatment we get out of our mature trees. I just know it's sort of a constant battle with our foresters and our urban forestry department, and then the stormwater folks, where we really do want to protect these mature trees, because I think they really do substantial more services, ecosystem services, than the rain garden, having the habitat and all of those other things that it can do, not just from the stormwater side. But I can't think of, it might be something, it's probably a good thing to try and find. I'm sure it's out there, maybe through the iTree tool or whatever that, if I'm saying that right. I think those are ways that we can estimate the benefits that we're getting from trees.
Yeah, I remember reading somewhere that it was like thousands of gallons of water, but I don't know per what. Another question I had was, you talk about grading to have water flow away from houses. Can you correct a grade by adding soil on top near the foundation, or do you have to dig it away from further out?
You can absolutely add it on top. Some folks get into complex when they're adding it on the top if they've got window wells or different grates or walkout basements and things. So sometimes there are other conflicting factors that you have to work around if you've got some of those either window wells that you can climb out of to make it a bedroom, or things of that nature. But using just the free dump filter that you can find on like Recycle and those other things at construction sites are always trying to get rid of fill. So using the slower draining, just subsoil clay stuff that we have everywhere. Don't try and use gravel on the surface, because our gravel actually has really big pore spaces. So sometimes gravel are added to the bottom of rain gardens to enhance that storage capacity, because the gravel has these pore or these void spaces. About 40% of the area between like our typical size gravel can be used to store water. So we don't want to put gravel as our grading material when we're trying to just fill and grade. Again, just sort of that heavy clay material and getting that runoff. You don't have to dig down, you can build up, but it can be tricky if you, depending on the slope, again, if you've got other complex like window wells or walkout basements or other things of that nature.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, it's just so wonderful for me. Every time I hear you talk about anything, I learn so much. And, and certainly one of the things, the take home for me is that it's really always better to ask and not guess. I mean, every example here pretty much is like, it wasn't what I would have expected just by hearing the words. It needed to see the picture to really get an understanding. So it was very kind of you to offer to let people email you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some more follow-up I think that needs to be done. Let me try and get, if I can get out of this. If anybody's still here and I can show, what's going on? There's some really fun tools out there to play around with. This is an internal one. They've two mapping tools for the county. Again, we have some folks outside of Fairfax County, but Fairfax County tools, if you want to look at old aerial imagery to see what your area looked like in your home before it was built, there's a tool in Fairfax County called JADE, J-A-D-E. So if you just look that up, it's a great mapping tool. There is another tool. This is the internal version of this plan review tool. There is an external version that they have made available as well. This shows there is a wonderful YouTube video. I'm not sure why it's not popping up. When you load this tool for yourself, a YouTube video will pop up to help you learn how to use this. So basically, let me just zoom in to random spots. Okay. So this, well, I think plan review tool is the name internally because it helps. So there's some layers like the sump layer. I don't think it's on the external tool. But all of these little blue lines that are snaking all over the place here, these are overland flow paths. So when people send us pictures during the rainfall of these, and they'll kind of describe it as a teeny little river running through their property. So if you were downhill from another property, like many of us are, water, of course, is going to flow downhill and it accumulates. So these little tails or these little streams, the county used the LIDAR data to do this. So these show these overland reliefs or overland flow paths. So again, when it's raining, you might see, depending on the vegetative cover, you might see some rainwater, depending on the intensity of the storm and the size and the duration. If it's just low and graduate, you might not see it. But so the end of these little tails, I think they only have it gauged to 1/3 of an acre because that's where they thought they could most accurately get it to, there we go, drainage area. So this is 0.4. So I think the little tails start showing up when you have an accumulation area of about 1/3 of an acre. So basically this shows us, again, that overland flow path. It's not a perennial stream way by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just with the grading of our yard and these natural flow paths, where can we expect water to go? So it's helpful because if we're building a new home, we need to pay attention to those grades and how much water might be coming this area. If somebody wanted to put a new house right in the middle here, we know, hey, we're getting a good bit of flow through here. You can't block that up. You'll have major issues. So I can try and share. Another good tool is a site records viewer. It's a public tool. If you just want to look at, if you are curious, if there's a new home that's gone up in your area or around you, again, this is Fairfax County based, you can click on a parcel and you can actually see those plans that were constructed, and you might see some rain gardens or other stormwater management features on those plans. So if you want to get nitty gritty and kind of look at the back end engineering of things and the stormwater calculations, you can use this tool. It's open and available to the public.
You mean the plans that had to be approved
Yep.
in order to get a permit?
Mm-hmm.
So you can spy on your neighbors and see if they're complying? Is that it?
It's again, this one has a tutorial on this launch screen, so I would urge you to watch this 5-minute video tutorial so you know how to use this tool. I put the link in the chat to this LDS tool. You can use it for a variety of reasons. I'll leave it at that. I don't know if I can quickly find something that would have a PDF associated with it. Let's see. All of the plans for the county, all of it, you could request it. It's FOIA-able. Before it would just take a longer process. And again, they're only updated from the early 2000s on this map, I think. They have all of that old data. They're trying to sort through it in the GIS department and code it out and put it associated with the right spot. So if your home was built before then, you're not going to see anything. But again, for those newer infills that are going in, if you want to look at the plans, it's all public anyways that you could normally do a FOIA request. But they've made sure all of these plans are clear of any like identifying information, which they would normally have to do before sending plans to the public, take like names of property owners and things off. So that's the site records viewer. Have fun poking around and looking at, again, it's kind of cool, I think, to look at some of the stormwater management features that are going on those lots and look at the sizing. I was going to share.
All right. Somebody made a comment about goats as an option for large amounts of invasives.
Goats can be kind of a good first pass to go in from what I hear. No, they're just eating the top growth. So, and they're not very, they don't discriminate. They're going to go in and wipe out pretty much everything, what I hear. So if you do have some good vegetation as well that's in there, I think they mow it down as well, unless you kind of move their electronic fence around or kind of fence out, some things that you really want them to protect. But again, if you're using goats, you really got to have that good follow-up plan, because they're going to go in and mow it down and clear it out. But it's what comes next, because they're not removing the roots of that plant material. So some of these long, well-established invasives are really going to spring back pretty quickly and vigorously. So whether it's using a few successive times of using the goats to just sort of knock back a lot of that top growth, but it is a management tool that has been used. I don't know if you know anything else about. There's other people in our office, I think, our agriculture agent, who I think they've had some experience, or people have used goats on their property to try and clear an area.
We do have a list of goat companies on the website.
Okay.
But how well they have been received, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's been popping up more and more. I have been hearing about it. So I'm trying to get to this. I thought I had it saved. I'll just throw up, this is the link to Jade, which is that tool where if you want to look at old aerial imagery and many different layers. But the one tool, if you want to see those flow accumulation layers, so those drainage paths, I'm going to try and get up the public one real quick. image basin delineation tool. Here we go. So again, I think when you launch this, it has that landing pad screen that has a YouTube tutorial, like the plan, or not the plan tool, the site records viewer that I would encourage you to watch. It's brief, but it's thorough and it tells you how to use it. So yeah, watch this 5-minute tutorial.
Okay, great. Well, I will send out these links with the recording of this session. So thank you very, very much. All right, any final questions? I guess not. All right, well, as always, Maria, you're wonderful. So appreciate that. And I think you actually did our first Ask the Expert session ever 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. Anyways, more than a year. And so that's great. We just didn't capture that one as a recording. So I'm glad we did this one. Okay, so everyone, thanks for coming, and our next session is actually going to be on invasive plants in July. So sign up if you're interested. All right, bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.